every day, and I know we cannot go back. So I don't want anyone in the world to feel this way. We want to stop it now.
Those were the words of Yukiko Kameya. She is a former resident of Futaba, which is the town where part of the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant is located. She fled her home after the nuclear meltdown and will likely never be able to return home. When we come back from break, we'll be joined by the former mayor of Futaba. Stay with us. Music from the film Nuclear Nation, the Fukushima refugee story. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. This is the third day of our broadcast from Tokyo, Japan, and the final day. We are talking about moving in on the third anniversary of the Fukushima disaster. 19,000 people died or went missing on that day, March 11th, 2011, and the days afterwards, when the earthquake triggered a tsunami and 3 of the reactors at the Fukushima nuclear power plant melted down. We're joined right now by Futaba's former mayor, Katsutaka Edogawa. For years, he embraced nuclear power. Now he has become a vocal critic. He's featured in the film Nuclear Nation. We welcome you to Democracy Now! And thank you for traveling 2 hours to join us here at the studios of NHK International for this conversation. Mayor, explain what happened on that day. Special thanks to Mary Joyce, who's translating for you today. On that day, March 11, 2011, and the days afterwards, when you decided it was time for the thousands of people who lived in your town, Futaba, to leave.
当日そしてその後の翌日などについてお話しください。
こんにちは。当日は突然大きな地震が鳴りました。その時今まで経験のない地震だったんで。
So on that day there was an earthquake of the scale of something we'd never experienced before.
大変驚きました。
It was a huge surprise.
原発に事故がなければいいなと祈っていました。
And at the time I was just hoping that nothing had happened to the nuclear power plant.
しかしやっぱり事故が起きてしまいました。
However, unfortunately, there was in fact an accident there.
そこで私は多くの町民を
And then I worked with the many residents.
放射能からの完全避難を考えました。
And thinking about how I could fully evacuate them from the radiation.
You made a decision to evacuate your town before the Japanese government told the people in the area to do this, but not before the U.S. government told Americans to leave the area, and other governments said the same.
日本政府は後でした。 私の失敗は日本政府の避難指示を待ったことです。
Yes, the Japanese government's information to evacuate became much later than that, and my mistake at the time was initially waiting to hear that.
あと3時間早ければ多くの人たちの直接の被爆は防げました。
If I had made that decision even 3 hours earlier, I would have been able to prevent so many people from being so heavily exposed to radiation.
残念ながら300名程度の人たちが直接被爆をしてしまいました。
However, as a result of that, unfortunately, several hundreds of people were directly affected by this radiation.
Where did you decide to move the whole town?
町民全員避難させようと思ったのはいつでした？
これは11日の地震の最中に考えていました。
I was originally thinking about this at the time of the earthquake on March 11 first.
タイミングを考えるのに政府の情報に頼ってしまいました。
However, at first I was waiting to rely on the government information to decide the timing for this.
And so you moved the town to a school in the outskirts of Tokyo, is that right? The entire town to an abandoned school. Explain how you set up your government, your whole community, in this one building.
全員の町民を避難させることはできませんでしたけども、県内に多くの町民を残してしまいました。
Right at the start, we were unfortunately not able to evacuate all of the residents, and some actually did remain within parts of Fukushima Prefecture.
このために福島県内と埼玉県内の町民同士にわだかまりができてしまいました。
And as a result of this, there was actually a gap created between those who were still remaining within the greater Fukushima Prefecture area and those who evacuated to Saitama outside of Tokyo.
情報が十分使えなかった。携帯電話が使えなかったことが原因です。
And the reason for this is we had no access to communications, information, to mobile phones.
And so how long did people stay? How many people were in this school? And what role did the government play? How has the government helped the refugees?
埼玉県には1400人ぐらい避難できました。
So we were able to evacuate around 1,400 of the residents to Saitama Prefecture outside of Tokyo.
その人たちは放射能からの強い影響はありませんでしたけども、だんだんと福島県の方に戻っていくようになりました。
So they were saved from the initial first exposure, the most serious exposure to radiation at the time, but many of them, unable to deal with this situation, gradually started to return to different parts of Fukushima Prefecture.
You have not returned back to your town?
はい、私は未だに放射能からの避難を続けております。
Yes, I am still living in evacuation away from the heavily radiated areas.
Can you talk about the meetings that you've had with the government? You have a remarkable association of nuclear mayors in Japan. The mayors who preside over towns that have nuclear power plants in them.
以前から事故を起こす前から事故を起こしてくれるなということを東電と政府に頼んでおりました。
From before the accident, we had always been strongly calling upon the government and also TEPCO to make sure that no accident was ever allowed to happen.
その時彼らは必ず町長、事故は起きないから大丈夫ですって言ってました。
And they were always telling us, don't worry, Mayor, no accident could ever happen.
この約束を破ったために私は反原発になりました。
However, because this promise was betrayed, this is why I became anti-nuclear.
I want to go to a clip from Atsushi Funahashi's new documentary film about the former residents of Futaba, where the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant is partly located. The film is called Nuclear Nation, the Fukushima Refugees Story. And we're going to go to a part of the film that shows a part of this remarkable meeting of government officials with the atomic mayors, the nuclear mayors of Japan.
The future of energy production and Japanese energy policy is currently being debated. And this is something we've communicated to you regarding the details of this review. I believe it's important to clearly define the terms as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
The industry minister leaves his seat in the first 5 minutes.
The central and pre-functional governments are working on the annual health check guidelines based on what we've researched. Until now, the impact of radiation on children appears negligible. However, we will endeavor to keep you apprised of any developments.
The nuclear crisis minister follows suit, citing official duties.
And now, we'd like to open the floor for comments. Please raise your hands.
I'm representing Futaba. I want to know why we're being made to feel this way. It's frustrating. What does the Nuclear Power Committee think? When you came and explained it to us, you lied, saying it was safe and secure. But we, who trusted and believed you, can no longer live in our own town.
That last voice was the mayor at the time of Futaba, Katsutaka Adugawa, who is with us today in our Tokyo studio. Futaba is where part of the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant is located. He was speaking, addressing this meeting of government officials and nuclear mayors from around Japan in August of 2011. You just heard, the voices of Goshi Hosono, who was the nuclear crisis minister of Japan, and Banri Kaiyeda, minister of the economy, trade, and industry. And after each of them spoke, they politely took their leave of the room before the mayors could address them. So they did not hear the Futaba mayor's statement about the lies from the government. Talk about that particular meeting.
はい。この事故以来、政府には早く手厚い会合をお願いしてきましたけども、
At the time, we were calling for a strong response and attention from the government since the disaster.
彼らは聞こうとしておりません。
However, they didn't even try to listen to what we were calling for.
いつまで経っても約束を果たそうとしていませんでしたので、
And they continued to not even try to make efforts to fulfill their responsibilities or promise to us.
被害を受けている私たちを目の前にして、都合の悪いことはいつもあのように去っていってしまってたんです。
And so they continued to appear before us, those who were suffering directly from the disaster, but instead of listening to something which would maybe be difficult for their ears to hear, they would just leave the room, not even listen to us at all.
残っていた彼らは政府の役人ですけども、私に事故を起こさないって約束していた者もおります。
And within those who were left in the room were some government officials, including some who were directly the ones who told me that no accident would ever happen.
彼らに何言ってもダメですので、 後ろを向いて仲間に話をかけました。
However, no matter what I would try to appeal and say to them, it would not have any effect. So instead, I turned around and appealed and spoke to my colleagues, my fellow residents.
本当のことを彼らに話そうとしたんです。
And I tried to tell them what was really happening, the situation.
Former Mayor Katsutaka Adugawa, you were a fierce proponent of nuclear power. You were pushing for 2 more reactors to be built even closer to Futaba than the others. You were proud of getting tens of millions of dollars for your town for hosting these reactors. How